Okay, welcome everybody. Hello. Did you miss me? I missed you. I totally missed you. Feels so funny just going 2 weeks and it already feels like it's been forever. But thank you for bearing with me. I moved into my fabulous new home in Manhattan with a full pull-out bed. I'm just saying, in case anybody wants to come visit. You got a spot in New York City now. And I ran this conference thing, which I hope some of you got a chance to have a look at and enjoy. And now I'm settling back in. I'm settling back in. I'm going to Seattle tomorrow and then Denver. But, settling back in at least for today. Thank you all for joining, and good to see all your faces again. Did any of you get a chance to check out the Gathering Summit at all over the last few days? Yeah, I'm seeing a few heads nodding. All right, cool. Would love to get your impressions on that today. And I would love to talk about the topic that Serena brought up in our discussion over email around all of the different kind of people management related stuff, and even stuff like replacing soap and toilet paper and things like that, and how we handle a lot of that back and forth. So we'll make that a topic. We don't have a huge turnout today, so we should be able to do a quick round of check-ins. But we're going to try to keep it brief on the check-ins, and then if there's a topic that you would like us to focus on, you can make an official hot seat request, and you can do that either when you introduce yourself or in the chat. So let's just do a quick round of check-ins. We'll start with our friends in Highland Park, since I've got Jen Luby up top. And Jen, I got to say, I love that you're rocking the denim.
Yeah.
Oh, and also thank you for your interior design help.
No problem. I look forward to just seeing it come together. Yeah, it's actually warm for today, but tomorrow it's going to be 30 and snowing. So, getting some spring on. Let's see. So I'm Jen in Chicago suburbs at Day House Co-working. We had our open house and ribbon cutting on Thursday. It was phenomenal. We had 55 people here. Yeah, it was really, really spectacular. I choked up during my speech, so I didn't really get through my speech.
Yay.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm a little under the weather, so we'll see how long I stay here, but I can't think of anything pressing.
Awesome. Well, hang tight, Jen, get better, and congrats on the launch. That is such a special thing. Do you have pictures you can share with us?
I have some, but there's a photographer there, and we should be getting those in a couple of days.
Okay, fair enough. All right, get better, Jen. Jessica, how was your experience with that?
It was great. As Jen said, it was our first big event here in the space, so it's just interesting to see the flow of people in our downstairs area. And we are going to do it again with another event on Saturday. So we are having, this time we're adding into the mix children. So, God be with us. Yeah, so just getting ready for that. We're going to be introducing our nonprofit resident to the community. We're hosting a pajama party, and it'll be fun.
Awesome.
And then Jen and I get on a crack of the dawn early flight the next day to go to Denver.
Woo! Awesome. Excited to see you there. Okay, cool. And let's go over to Invermere. Megan, how are things over in your world?
Hey everyone, Megan here. Yeah, things are really good. We finished our final room build out, and now we're going to do another office over Easter break. And so all our offices are rented at capacity, and so that's really exciting. Excellent.
All right, very good. And how are you feeling about the conversation that unfolded over the weekend around the storefront challenges?
Yeah, I really, really appreciated, I forget, was it Julia? Yeah. Really appreciated hearing from someone else that encounters something similar, because it is quite a unique situation. And we want to be open, but we also want to protect our members and make sure that they have a productive workday. So I think that there's going to be some creative solutions and a lot of trial and error, and maybe some seasonality options too, because I can already see it picking up and the interruptions are picking up. So it was just really fun knowing that there is someone else that has exactly the same problem, because it feels pretty like isolating. Like, no. Yeah, it was helpful.
All right, fair enough. Thanks, Megan, and keep us posted on any issues that come up, specifically regarding walk-ins as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Jennifer in Houston, how are things over there?
Everything's good. We have Alba today.
Hi. Hello.
Hello. Remind us your name?
My name is Alba Ayala.
Oh, Alba. Cool. Hey, welcome.
I'm Herman's wife, and I think I met you in New York a couple years ago. But
yeah. Okay. Cool. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So what's going on over there?
So we've been open about a year and a half, and we are Northwest Houston, so we're in the suburbs, a little different than the big cities. About a year ago, we were almost at full capacity, with the exception of our desks. We had a couple offices where there were 2 people running, and in February, 2 of them left. They've kind of moved on to another part of Houston and merged with another company. So right now we've about 2 offices out of 7 rented out. Of course, we're in one. It's just 3, so we're just trying to push. We have an offer, a couple mail outs going out. We're finally getting a sign, which is a big deal because it took a while to get around getting out. So getting a sign out on the building. So we're hoping that'll bring in some traffic. Oh,
cool. Okay, cool. Very good. Keep us posted on how that goes. Okay. And I know we've been talking a little bit with Jennifer about some marketing strategy for you guys. So hopefully we'd have a chance to kind of take that a little bit further and see how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go to Penny, and then Serena, maybe we'll go to you and we'll kind of get into the topic. So Penny, how are things going for you?
Good. I'm in an airport. I won't talk long. I love the summit. I'm still listening to it. It's just great. Thanks so much, Tony, for putting it together.
Yay. Glad to hear it. All right, Serena, take the floor. Tell us about what you had sent in the email, maybe even a specific thing that you're trying to solve, right now that we can play with. And let's make this our first topic for the day.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm Serena. I work for Launchpad. We're a co-working space. We have 4 locations right now in 4 different cities, and I'm in our New Orleans location right now. With that being said, I know that some of our issues are different as a bigger space, but I do think the sort of challenges of managing a space to other people, because there's just always a lot of things to be done. So what I'm thinking of right now, what I mentioned in the email, is that we're thinking of sort of 2 things right now. One, like, is it sustainable for the community manager to be the only employee in every city, or one person in every space? That's the way we have it set up right now, but there's just so many demands on their time, but we don't necessarily have the budget to hire somebody else. So we're kind of thinking, like, I guess, would love to hear if people have best practices for, I guess, sort of time management in that regard. But also we have something called an ambassador program that we've tested out, and I'm actually doing a focus group on it this week, which is why I brought up this issue. We have basically people who do a work trade program. They work our front desk 1 day a week in exchange to be a free coworker, which has been time to train them, and they still don't do everything and don't know everything. So I'm curious if anybody else has, interns or anybody to help them out that in a way that's, maybe it's, let's have somebody work on this one specific project, or maybe we have somebody that just makes sure that the kitchen looks clean. So essentially I'm thinking of a lot of interrelated issues and opportunities with, how the management is managing the space, what can be improved, and then also specifically, and it's okay if we don't hit on all of this, but issue tracking related to, like, how do I know that we need to replace the paper towels if I'm not sitting in the kitchen? And how do I, what do I do if somebody says that the printer is broken or out of ink? And which order do I tackle those things? And what if it's not time sensitive? How do I let somebody know I'm working on it, but, might get to it tomorrow? So those are all, I think, related in the scheme of, space management. So that's sort of the broad overview. And I would love to hear if anybody has really effective solutions for either like, issue and task management or working with people that are not just the community manager in a space.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Serena. And I think those are all things that we can absolutely address. They're not uncommon issues. They're tricky issues, but they're not unsolvable. And so that's perfect, because then we could do something about it.
No.
So let me cover 3 topics related to that, and would love to get input from anybody else in the group as well. But I'll kick things off for us. One is just the overall structure as it pertains to kind of the size of the space and how that's distributed. 2 is that desk share program and maybe just some thoughts on how to do that better. And 3 is other ways of reinforcing and making more leaderful culture in the space, which, remind me if I forget, is actually about culture and signage. So 2 things in there. So kind of 4 topics. So first of all, in terms of the overall org chart, what size ranges are we talking about for these spaces?
A big range. In New Orleans, we have 40 private offices-ish, plus permanent desks, plus offices. We have like a huge floor of an office building. It's very large. Our smallest space has 2 private offices and room for like 15 coworkers.
Okay.
So it's very different in each location that we're in. Got it.
And what's your staff distribution across those spaces? Like, obviously the bigger space has more staff.
Kind of. So our model right now is that each space has 1 community manager, and we have just hired an operations manager in one of our offices that is at capacity. She's part-time. So it's 1 community manager and a part-time operations manager. New Orleans is our headquarters. So that's where we have our management team, of which I'm a part. But my job is not necessarily focused on New Orleans. It's focused on sort of our expansion and our growth. So it's this challenge where we have 5 employees in our New Orleans office, but having more people isn't necessarily helpful. Now.
You cut out for the last 10 seconds or so, Serena, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying. You're looking okay. It looks like you're okay now. Okay, so the reason I'm asking is because it might be, so one of the potential issues could just be that you might need to take on more staff than you hope that you could get away with, which I imagine is something that y'all have talked about in some capacity. But just to give you a sense of it, with the 5,000 foot space that I ran, we had a full desk share program of a rotating group of people at the front desk, 1 full-time employee who was running the space, and then 2 founders who were also helping with kind of the business side of things, and mostly trying not to be in the day-to-day, but getting pulled into it still. So with that, we wanted to create at least a way to create separation between people who are dealing with administrative stuff and people who are dealing with member-facing stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's absolutely critical. There's this construct called maker time and manager time, which I've talked about in earlier calls. There's a blog post by Paul Graham about this, but it really details how you're in totally different brain spaces if you're in a maker mindset where you're creating, like you're making the MailChimp newsletter or you're updating the website or something like that, versus anything involving dealing with other people, meetings or dealing with space issues or tours or whatever that is. And the thing that creates super ultra stress that burns people out, makes people want to quit, is when they're in maker mindset and they get interrupted to do manager stuff, and then they have to come back to do the maker thing, and the creative train has gone off the rails. Mm-hmm. And it takes a long time to get back on. And then once you get back on, and then the phone rings and you're like, shit, right? So that super frustration dynamic is just totally not acceptable. It's not sustainable. And so we want to create as much division between those as possible, in the roles, but also in the shifts. So if you've got, for example, you might have 2 employees in a given space where at any given time, one of them's on call and one of them is off call. And that might mean that they're physically not in the space, that they're working remotely from home, or that they're kind of squirreled away, far away from the front desk, but just not catchable so that they can focus on their stuff. And if you can create the management dynamic to say, okay, this is when somebody's on call, and maybe that's even like communicated publicly to the members, hey, this is when these people are available and you should go to them during these times. And, that's what you should expect. And during these times, these people are in focus mode so that they can do a good job, to run the business. Members still want what they want when they want it, and they're going to ask whoever they want to ask regardless. But mostly it's the physical boundary, honestly, just hiding a person or giving them a chance to be remote. And in order for them to be able to do that in a lot of these spaces, you're going to need those desk share people to be at the front lines. And so the desk share program is proven, tried and true. It is, I think, essential for most spaces, unless you're really going to a WeWork level, where you want people who you're not going to have to pay money to, who are going to be grateful to have a chance to work in your space, working a few shifts a week, maybe 2 or 3 4-hour shifts, maybe a little bit more. And you've got maybe 3 to 5 people in rotation on that. And the trick there is you got to get good at it in terms of finding good applicants and training them and managing them. You have to expect that they're not going to stick around for a long period of time. So it's going to be a cyclical thing. So you just put it right in your calendar. Hey, every quarter we're going to put out a new call for people. But the beauty is that if you give it some time, maybe a year, hopefully less, you'll find people who actually really fit the role, who want to stay. And we had that for, I think, a year or 2 towards the end of our run, where we had people who were just perfectly happy to play that role. And it was awesome. It was these 2 French girls who were doing a startup together. And so they both were taking shifts and they were friends with each other. So they were like covering each other's shifts and they were handling stuff themselves. And they both became friends with my space manager. And so they all became this kind of clique, and they were all just kind of covering for each other. So even when one of them wasn't on duty, if somebody walked in, the other person was in the bathroom or whatever, they would just kind of jump in and help each other. So we had this really awesome kind of tight-knit group of people in that desk share thing. And it just took us a little while to get there. But once we got there, it really paid dividends for a long time and made life a lot easier. And yeah, you can't expect a tremendous amount from them because they're not employees. They're not going to be able to administer your memberships. There's a lot that they can't do. But they can handle the frontline stuff of somebody walks in off the street, the phone rings, the soap runs out, whatever. Yeah.
Do you have any written resources about how you ran your desk share program?
In the toolkit right now, we have a application and a blog post for getting new people. Do I have documentation for how we ran it? I have we have the employee manual that we used, which you could give a skim through. We may have created documents specifically for sharing with those people because they weren't employees, but we still needed to kind of get them in on the back end of certain components of it. So I am going to look that up and see what I have to share. I'm pretty sure we do have something in that regard. If not, maybe we can whip something up together. But I'm just trying to remember what we called them because we didn't want to call them space cadets for obvious reasons. All right, I'll look it up. I'm just going to make a note in my Google Drive to kind of keep that open.
Thanks.
What else, as far as that's concerned, that program, what challenges have you encountered that maybe we can step through?
I think the sort of logistical stuff that maybe we call them ambassadors in New Orleans, that they wouldn't know how to deal with. we have a postage meter, like people can pay to get mail shipped. So like it's not part of their daily tasks to like check that. And so if that runs out of ink, granted this is a very specific problem, but if that runs out of ink, they're not checking it every day. So a member might tell one ambassador that it's out of ink, but then that message sometimes slips through the cracks, and then it's 2 weeks and the member's upset because they don't have access to this amenity. And so I guess more specifically is like when there's a problem that the ambassador desk chairperson doesn't know how to deal with, I think we're figuring out like what the communication is to get it to the community manager so as not to necessarily interrupt that like maker time.
Yeah, totally. That's ideally what you want is outside of the front desk people, the volunteers, that you should be able to have in some way 2 people where at any given time one of them can be on call and one of them can be not. Or, if you really kind of have to have like one person in a given center, like your smaller space that you were describing, well, then you're just not going to have the same kind of volume of need. So, once you get above 5,000, 7,000 square feet, you'll be making enough money that you could pay 2 people at least, at some basic capacity. And it might be that you can, once you split those responsibility, that the operations manager can, maybe be paid a little bit more as more of a manager, and that the maker stuff can be taken out to more of like a marketing intern or something like that, where they can do more of the creation related stuff and not ever have to be client facing, or perceived in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the things, if I can jump in.
Yeah, Clint, go for it.
One of the things that we use, we call them conductors. And so we have a different one for each day of the week. But on a practical level, what we use is Slack. And so we have just kind of like if something happens, say, on a Monday that will affect Tuesday, our Monday conductor will Slack it, and we just kind of have it. It's called like daily updates or something like that. And so, or she could Slack me as the community manager directly. So it's kind of just one of those ways to keep like an almost real-time communication going. And it helps. It's not a perfect system because, again, it's like you have to make sure they're using it and it, staying on top of it. But it allows you to kind of always continually check in, see what's going on, and keep most things from falling through the cracks. So anyway, that's just kind of something that we use as far as allowing them to communicate on those things. Or if a member comes up with a question or a problem, those kind of things. So.
Yeah, you can also, I think you can develop a protocol for, let's say you've got a space manager in a given location, and the space manager says, okay, look, every day from 2 to 4 is my deep work time. So I'm not going to look at my email. I'm not even going to look at Slack. I'm going to just focus. So if somebody comes up with a question that can be answered at 4, post it to my Slack or whatever it is. If it's an emergency, call me. And I'll have my ringer on for phone calls, right? Or you'll have like some setup for that. So, if in case of emergency, sure, interrupt my deep work time, right? If it's not so much of an emergency that someone can wait 2 hours, then, post it to Slack, and then that maker mode person has to just say, okay, I'm turning off my notifications. I have to focus. Because something like sending out the monthly newsletter or the weekly MailChimp or whatever it is, I've had so many days where I start at 9 o'clock and I say, today I'm going to send the newsletter. And at 6 p.m., I still haven't sent the newsletter, right? And it's like, those are the days that I didn't like my job. I see some nodding heads. So, and look, here's another interesting game we can play with this, is it doesn't really work, honestly, in the space, but it's worth trying in some way, is to say our members are dealing with this too. We are in a distractionful world where the internet and all this stuff is a problem, and we all need to focus on doing a better job of it together. And so with work sprints, we can create these constructs for ourselves, not even as a member-driven program, but recruit the members to kind of buy into this culture with us. To say like, hey, see that long table over there? we put like a little stand with a little sign that says, you know, like you see in the cafes where it's like deep work table, 2 to 4 p.m., Tuesdays and Thursdays, or whatever it is. Sit here during that time, put on your headphones, and if you're not working with us, leave us the hell alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then have your staff maybe sit there with other people who want to deep work and create that cultural expectation of like, look, we're going to protect our own, right? We're going to like, where this is our herd and we need to focus. So unless it's an emergency, leave us alone, right? And maybe recruit the other members into it too. I think it could create double value there.
And then one more thing on that note that I didn't mention that I think is an important piece of it, beyond just, you know, us making sure that we're addressing all the issues. As I said, we're a remote team. We have people in multiple cities. So part of what I'm trying to figure out is like, as a manager, and I have a coworker that does this more directly, but, you know, how do I make sure that our Memphis community manager is doing all the things to respond to members' needs, like beyond him telling me? Like, I want to make sure that members are feeling like they have a way to get their needs met, and I need to know that that's happening from another city, which again, I know is a very kind of specific problem. But so we had toyed with like a ticketing system where members could text in. We've done like feedback boxes and that surveys. So we've tried some things, but that's kind of another piece that it's like community managers, we want to make sure they're doing the things. Yeah. We want to make sure members also feel like they're heard.
Serena, can I make a suggestion? This is Tamara. I'm driving.
Yes.
So.
Hey, Tamara, you're driving.
Drive safe.
Sorry. So I would randomly call some members.
Yeah, I've just started doing that, and they've been thrilled.
Because I think for me, the ticketing and all that is all fine and good, but truthfully, you've just got to reach out to them and talk to them and let them feel like it is okay to talk to you, not just to complain, but to tell you the good also.
Mm-hmm.
So to ask very specific questions, you know, about their personality type. How are they handling your questions? Do you feel like you're being heard? Do you feel like you're annoying them? It's so hard for me when I hired Megan and then Clint that people know that I am the people person and I have this softer side to me, but you know, I'm pretty tough too. But the fact is that I'm very heart-led and heart-driven. And so Clint's on the call, but he'll know. I mean, I talk to people. How is Clint doing? What, you know, of course, there's nothing negative to say about this guy. They were all bragging on him last night, even after we left to dinner. But I need to make sure that when I'm not there all the time, you know, that Clint has given them the same feel that they're used to. And that is the only way I'm going to find that out is by talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you don't have personal relationships with these members, if you're over all of these spaces, you should start reaching out to connect to these people for sure.
I'm curious, when you call people, and I think that's such a good idea, do you like schedule calls, or do you just kind of say, okay, I'm going to call 5 members this week, or do you have a method, I guess?
I don't think you need to have one. I think it could be random, of course, as I do with any phone call that I make to any human being, which is, do you have time to talk?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you have time to talk? I just want to ask you a couple of questions about your experience at blah, blah, blah. And just see if there's anything that you love so much about us, and if there's any areas for improvement. And make sure you have some specific questions that you've written down. You don't need to follow them check by check, but it's so you know that you're hitting those points in a natural conversation. And it's just like, look, we just want to make your experience be amazing. And the only way to do this is to be talking to our members.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just add, so Serena, do you have, what's like your communication between members? How do members talk to each other in a given location?
We have a Slack that we use.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are people on it? Like, is it generally pretty active?
I have been working on making it more active. It kind of varies by city.
Yeah. Okay. I figured. Well, because the reason I say is because if you can get a good level of adoption on there, then I think you won't get 100% visibility, but people will use Slack to talk about stuff that's going on in the space. good and bad, once that's part of the culture. So again, you won't get everything, but if something's going wrong, people will be talking about it on there and you'll be able to get some insight into it. I do have some tips on how to get people using Slack, which I say as a person who runs a community that does not use its Slack.
Yeah, intrigued by that.
But it's a bit of a conscious choice, but we could talk about that maybe if we have time. We'll stick with
Okay, yeah, we can go back to that, but I'd love to hear. But thank you, everyone.
I have a quick thing just to add from a procedural standpoint. So my background, I worked at the Chicago Symphony, and something that we used every day after our concerts was a concert report. So our front of house manager, after each concert or event that happened in the building, gave a detailed report of, time the doors open and any issues and whatnot. And so it was great because then we as the staff could then come in the next morning and read the report. So if patron A had an argument or didn't like their seat, and argued with patron B, I was in the development team, could then reach out to them and make nice. But it was just a great way to get a snapshot of what happened in the space without being there. And so I don't know if you want to do that. There's a running document for each day, and your ambassadors, they could make a note like, hey, I refilled the toner, or, if it's something they don't know how to do, hey, the ink is running out at the postage meter. So then your space manager, when they come in each day, can read that and see all the notes and whatnot, what happened, to get a snap.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
We actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Jessica, because I was going to head in that direction too around some basic communication constructs. I assume that all the staff have their own kind of Slack channel or private section. And you might even be able to create one that includes the desk volunteers, which would be a separate channel. But I worked last year briefly for a web development firm, an app development firm that my friend runs, and it was the best project managed company I've ever worked for. And they had extremely well-run, rigid kind of check-in and retrospective processes. So for a mega big project that they were working on that I was helping them with that had a very tight deadline, we had daily stand-ups over Slack. It was a remote team. And the way that stand-up worked was I would start a post to the channel at 2 p.m. every day, and it would just say, hey, how's it going? What'd you do? What's next, and what's blocking you? And it was really easy for everybody in the team to check in at 2 o'clock and just say, this is what I did. This is what I'm doing next. This is what I need help with. Right. And it was literally, you could do it in 1 minute from your phone when you're, walking somewhere. Right. So it was a low barrier, but super high value because everyone could see what everyone was up to. And it made it easy for everybody to kind of destigmatize an issue. Like one of the problems that we have in a situation like you're describing is that someone could be running a space in the city and they're trying to like hold space for an issue because they don't want corporate breathing down their neck about some problem. So they want to like handle it themselves. Yeah. And right. And like, that's fine until it's not. And by the time it's not, it's already a big problem.
Right. So that's kind of what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah. So we want to depressurize that. And so one of the ways that you can do it is by creating really safe protocols to say like, this is what I've dealt with. And it's okay to say like, I'm like, there's a thing that I'm actually a little worried about. I think I've got it under control, but I want to, mention it. And that way it's easier for somebody to say, look, like I'm dealing with this thing. I don't think I need help right now, but if I do, I'll let you know. Right. Because we want those center managers to know, hey, look, if you're dealing with something, we're not going to focus on blame. We want to be there to support you if you're facing a challenge. And so we want to just try to make that really, really safe. And I think if you can create that kind of simple construct of being able to check in, maybe on a daily basis, ideally with like that super lightweight chat Slack check-in, it could really, help to depressurize things a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's what we're working towards.
Yeah. And there are like plugins and things, you can have something that just automatically posts a poke, you know, on a regular thing that just says like, hey, it's check-in time, what's going on, you know? And it helps if you're doing it too, like lead by example, right? So, you know, even folks at the home base should be kind of doing it. Cool. Oh, so another kind of subject area within this is signage and just the visible communication. So in terms of the members and empowering the members as much as possible, it's amazing how far you can get with just putting a fair bit of thought and care into giving people instructions and communication in the moment at the spot where they would most need it. So, you know, over the coffee maker is a critical spot because a lot of people stand there, and what goes above the coffee maker could make a huge difference in terms of the amount of labor that your staff has to go through. So if you can put on the sign, hey, did the coffee grounds run out? Here's where you go find them. Is the coffee pot out of coffee? Here's how you make new coffee. You know, and even like labeling, you know, what's behind each cabinet, where all the things are located, that kind of thing. Anything that you find people are coming to the front desk asking about that they really could handle themselves is an opportunity to make a laminated sign. And we've got actually a bunch of those, links to a bunch of those in the toolkit. We have a signage folder, so you could use that for inspiration. If some of those things match and they're not too ugly, you can just print them out and use them if you want. You're probably going to want to brand them yourselves, but just to give you some inspiration. And some of those are on Canva, so you can actually just hop right in and edit them.
Oh, great. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Toolkit, big fan of the toolkit. And I'll also add, and by the way, I did find some Google Docs specifically for the, what we called the command center, and for the people who would sit there, who would be the volunteers. And it had people's, I'll bring it up on screen share. It's worth just blowing through a little bit. I'm gonna have another look at this once we're off the call and then add these to the toolkit. So I'm so glad that you brought this up. Okay. Share, Space Captain. Here we go. So I have multiple versions of basically the same document. Can y'all see this okay?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, so command center directory, and first thing is everybody's phone numbers. Sarah was our space captain, our employee. Peter was my co-partner, and Tony was me. Space agents, that's what we call them. Amelie and Tamara were the two French girls I mentioned. So everybody kind of has each other's info right up top. And then this was kind of a living document, right? But we had this information that we showed people, anybody new who joined as a space agent, got to see this document and kind of see basic stuff about tours, about day passes. The most frequent stuff was right up top. And as I recall, we had this printed out and posted literally right up at the front desk, visible at all times. So it was easy for somebody to kind of check on what they needed when they were there. And obviously you can make like an even fancier looking version of this, but what you want to try to do is keep this to, basically like a 1-pager or 2-pager that you could very easily print out, put up on a wall, and someone could just super easily skim. If I remade this, I would have this color coded with like icons or emoji or something. So it's really easy for someone to see like, oh, this is the music section, this is the internet section, this is the printer section, whatever. Mm-hmm. Even like, look, internet trouble, okay, sure. Definitely tell the space captain, but also, email corporate basically and copy our IT person. Like this is our IT person, Again, another version of this, I'd give them the phone number for the IT person right away, and so just go straight to the source. And by the way, this IT person was also an exchange. So he offered us services we could not afford to pay in exchange for whatever deal we gave him. So big fan of this document. And also very important, this was a living document that everyone could contribute to as well. Or maybe there was another version of it that was. But there was a way for the people at the front desk to be able to contribute to this document as they went. So there was some way for that to work out. And then I've got multiple versions of this document that we kind of evolved over time. So this one had a little bit more detail on like, this is how we manage our scheduled tours, you know, and those kinds of things.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. Even like, here's where we keep some cash if we needed to pay like a cleaner or somebody who came in. Oh, or, you know, like what would happen a lot is like, let's say somebody's at the front desk and they need to buy like whatever. We ran out of coffee. We just got to run across the street to Starbucks to buy a pound of coffee just to get us by for the afternoon. How does the front desk person who's not even an employee of ours pay for that? You know? So great. We've got a way of handling that. Right. So look, this is a fair bit of work to document all this stuff, but every single thing that you write down here could save you countless hours and hours and hours that accumulate over the years of administration. So the more that you're able to do that, the better. And I think, yeah, this is for the actual employee. We had this documented, and we now have a full-fledged employee manual that you guys can use. But I'll share all these documents with you in the group anyway.
Awesome. That's really, really helpful. Thank you so much.
I'll also add, at the front desk, do you have a computer that is like an admin computer there?
No.
No.
But most people bring their own.
Okay. Yeah. We had it where we had a Mac Mini there that just lived there. And that was also like our DJ setup for the music for the space. And it actually was also just the way that our space was configured, the AV for our event space that was right there. So it was like our command center. But we were able to have certain like administrative screens logged in all the time in that computer. So even if you weren't an employee, if you had the password to that computer, you could log in and actually do some administrative stuff without us giving you administrative access, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we had like that document was open all the time, and people ended up leaving sticky notes for each other. So it was a little bit of like, oh, hey, we ran out of this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. People could just leave notes for each other. So something to keep in mind. A Mac Mini is super cheap, so it's easy to kind of just drop an old machine in the space and maybe have that there to make that kind of a information command center thing. And all of this is in part to lower the barrier for those desk share people, because they're so important and because it's going to be such a motley crew that you're going to have a new person rotating in every few months who has no experience with this. If they sit down at the desk and they've got a computer with this info and they've got laminated, stuff with all the info of exactly everything they need to know, and they can just be like, oh, it's here, right? Because I just walked in, I've never worked in this space before. Immediately someone comes up to me and says, hey, my computer's not connecting to the printer. What do I do? And I'm like, oh shit, I have no idea what to do. Boom, the printer thing's right here on the wall, ready to go.
Yeah.
That's one less call to the space manager.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Jen asks, would an iPad suffice? Yeah, sure, maybe. I don't know. I liked having a computer that had the tabs open and had the sticky notes. So I don't know how it would work on an iPad, but maybe there's a way that you can create kind of a similar vibe of like little icons on the desktop with saved websites that you can pull up. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, if other people have thoughts, we totally can move on. I feel like this was really helpful, but we can also keep talking about it. But thank you for everyone's help.
Totes. Other thoughts?
I think I have a question, and I was wondering if you guys could provide some feedback or suggestions. So there are a couple local coffee shops, and I was curious if there's any way to work a deal with them. Like one particular one, there's tons of people working in there, and so I've distributed bulletins, and I've even passed out cards. Is there any way that you could just go up to the owner and just say, I don't know, every third coffee, give them this, come use the space for half a day or something to that effect? Has anyone tried anything like that? Is that successful? Is that, because I know they want people out of there because they're just, there's some afternoons where it's jam-packed with people on their laptops. And those are the people we're trying to target.
Megan here, I have a comment on that. I've learned for my market anyway that anyone working for free in a coffee shop, knowing that there's a co-working space down the street, isn't interested in paying for co-working. So I've just let that go. I have, if I see people, I have handed out the card and say, hey, the Mountain Hub's right across the street. We have air conditioning. we have a great network, and the number of conversions is super, super low. So I think it's always an interesting idea to see if there's some partnership. So what we do is we work with a coffee shop that they give our members 10% off when they go for coffee.
I like that.
But if people are working there,
typically they're...
The competition for me primarily is home offices, getting people out of their home office. It's not the coffee shop.
That's true. That's true.
So 2 quick thoughts. One is talk to the managers of the coffee shops and just get to know them, and say, hey, we run this business, just want to kind of know what's going on in your world and see what's going on in their world. Like maybe they host coffee tasting events, or they want to do more of a certain thing that you can cross promote, something specific that isn't just kind of sticking a card in their space. So just kind of like get to know their side of the business and see where their needs are. Because the more that you can align with them and their needs, the more likely that the manager is going to recommend you when they talk to somebody. And that's good in general for local small businesses. We run these local small businesses, and local small businesses support each other. So even if it's the laundromat across the street, like if they know who you are, they talk to people and word gets around. And so if they're friendly with you because you were friendly with them, and you brought them some scones one day and you just talked them up and they were friendly, that works on its own, just local networking. But Megan's right. And the other thing that I would suggest, and I'm going to keep beating this drum because I believe in it so strongly, that we stop trying to sell our office space. Like not stop trying to sell it, but we stop trying to lead with office space as the thing we're selling, because it's just not exciting on its own. And we start trying to sell what's happening in our space. And so if you're dropping off flyers at the local cafe, you can drop off the come rent an office, and the conversion's probably going to be like Megan describes. If instead you drop off, here's our April events calendar of the cool stuff that's happening in our space, even if it's 2 or 3 events, it could be really lightweight, small stuff. A cafe person's probably a lot more likely to come into an event that is cheap or free. It's going to provide them some value that gets them in the door, that makes them say, oh, wow, this is wonderful. Who are these amazing people? And this is really nice. And by the way, the internet works and I can work here and the espresso machine isn't screaming every time I get into a client call. Like, oh, maybe I do want to work here, right? But we got to have that bridge to kind of hook them first. And I think if you put up that flyer of here's our upcoming events for the next month, and you post that up on the community boards at the cafes around town, that'll get people in the door. Now, are those people going to be office rental customers? Probably mostly not, but they might be basic level members who come in, once a week or once a month, who pay more part-time rate. And more importantly, you're raising awareness. So the person working at the cafe might not be your office rental customer, but their wife might be, right? Or their friend or their collaborator or whatever. So the more that we're creating the space of people who know and like you because they came to a program that's happening in your space, the better. And the more we can entice people to really understand the value of it, that's going to, I think, bridge the gap.
Yeah.
I like that idea of making little flyers, little, program calendars. So one of the things I want to talk about that came about from the Gathering Summit is this idea of partnering with other people who run kind of like chapter-based organizations. So there's kind of, in my mind, there's more than 2, but let's just say it's 2 for now, which programming that you source yourself as the people who run the space. And then there's programming that comes from other people, that's run by other people, that's housed in your space. And the thing is that we want to have as much programming as we can. But if we try to take it all on ourselves, it becomes way too much. And so what we want to try to do is say, okay, this is the core programming that our staff is going to run. And we're going to provide it, right? And that's kind of the basic stuff that we've talked about a million times. The happy hour, the lunch and learn, the show and tell, the work sprint, the Codivation. Basically, pick as many of those as you're willing to handle, but at least one or two of them, and that's kind of your core program that your staff runs. And all of those things are super easy to do. You can get the templates out of the toolkit. You can send out an automated email once a month. Almost none of them require any work. The show and tell, you have to line up the speakers, but that's about it, right? You still have to promote it. You still have to show up and run it, but we keep that super lightweight, right? And so you can have that on a regular rhythm, and that's part of your onboarding process and part of your marketing. But then the other side of it is, depending on the size of your space and the configuration of your space and your geography, you can be a home base to other people's gatherings. And that can require very little work aside from just making your space available to people. And that can be during business hours, it could be after hours, really depends on how your space is set up. But if you're able to create a perception that your space is also a gathering place that people can host their events in with some structured application process, so it's not just a field day, you can have people bringing in amazing people that are well qualified into your space. And one of the things that I'm kind of wanting to take this group on a trajectory towards is surfacing those opportunities. So for example, I mentioned Founding Moms a couple weeks back, where it's a mastermind group for moms who are entrepreneurs. And they have chapters in a bunch of cities, but they want to expand to more cities. One of their biggest problems in expanding is finding venues. And so if we could say, hey, who in the group, literally this screen right now, doesn't have a Founding Moms chapter in their city, could we help Founding Moms expand to your city simply by helping them find a local leader and giving them time in your space? Now Founding Moms is providing programming and
weird when we're in the same room.
Entrepreneurial moms into your space. So cool, right? So stuff like that is, now that's just one program. I know of like 20 of these. So, if we could kind of come up with a list of all these programs that could or should or would be in your city that aren't yet, or maybe in your neighborhood of your city, there could be multiple chapters in a big city like Houston. Then we might be able to get more programming happening in your space with not a ton of work. And then eventually sell sponsorships against it too, but we'll get there. How's all that sound? I'm talking a lot.
Sounds good.
It's so hard for me to tell sometimes if it's like Tony's office rocker and he's just ranting again, or he's providing value.
I agree with what Megan said, because last year, majority were people that work from home. And so I feel like in our surrounding, and I think we did a Google search, and there's a ton of DBAs in our area, so it's just targeting them. Like, get out of the house and be productive within those 4 hours, and just finding a way to kind of really hone in on that.
Yeah. The more you can show people what the value is of your space, aside from the office rental, the better. Like, there are people who need office rental, and for them, it's a pretty straightforward marketing situation. Like, it's, the same way that every other office rental kind of does it, is like, there's value, there's a structure for that. But you can have an edge by having a really great culture that's going to make your space more attractive than the other office rentals. But in order to do that, you got to attract people who don't need office space, but do need community and do need belonging and participation and all of those things. And so that's why I emphasize those simple programs, even a work sprint, Codivation. Codivation I can't, over talk about enough, because you could get 10, 12 people to do that, which is basically a mastermind group. And the culture that forms when people get vulnerable with each other in kind of a private setting, where they say, like, this is what I'm struggling with, help me out, and everybody helps them out. The bonds that are formed can become lifetime bonds. And really, a 10-person group that's super well bonded in your space has a ripple effect for 100. It's literally what happens is it's these like 80-20 kind of rules that happen where a small number of people are super engaged, but just that energy of those people really trusting each other, really reinforcing good cultural norms in the space, whatever. The rest of the people who are maybe a lot less active see that happening and say, wow, cool, I'm a part of something that's great and special. And it lowers the barrier for more of those people to kind of get active. We got 4 minutes left. Who has something that they saw at the Gathering Summit that they would like to share that they thought was cool? Nobody.
I do.
Thanks,
I
Megan.
really liked the setup of your online conference. I was curious to see how you were going to set it up and how it was going to look. And I thought it was really intuitive. It was really easy to find everything. I liked the emails that you sent. So I guess the content was great, but I was really impressed with the way that you packaged it up.
Thanks. You liked that, like you got an email with the agenda as if you were like walking into a conference, you got a schedule. And then
I love that.
And then when the page itself was the reflection of that as well. So you have a sense of like, I'm actually walking through the talks as we went.
It was, I was really, really impressed with that. Videos all worked really good. Like everything seemed to go, I'm sure there was stuff on the back end that, that as an attendee we couldn't see, but it seemed to go really, really smoothly.
I appreciate that, Megan. It did. It actually went extremely smoothly. And that was largely Casey's genius. I put a lot of the thought into the design of what you just described, but it was his idea to make it something that would be totally asynchronous. I thought we were going to have like a live broadcast of all the talks all at once or whatever. And he was like, no, it's like, if we do this right, we should be able to schedule everything and then just sit back and watch. And obviously we would be like administering and social media engagement and all that other stuff, but actually running the conference should happen just on its own. And so that was his genius. I do want to make more engagement happen, like chat back and forth with the people attending, because gathering news didn't really work for that in terms of people talking to each other. So we'll, in future iterations of this, we'll have more of that. But thank you for that, Megan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I just wanted to +1 the format with having the email every day. It was like kind of like the touchstone, like that was home base. So thank you for doing those.
Yeah. I wanted to do so much more, of course, but we had to scope it around like really creating a conference feel. Like, how do we create the hallway interaction that makes it so worthwhile? Like, could we actually have a random Zoom meeting that you just click on at a designated time and just whoever shows up, you're just like, oh, cool, who are you? Or even to have like icebreakers. Or like we talked about having multimedia, like music and poetry kind of interspersed. That is what it was. Yeah. Next time. Got to save something for next time.
One thought on that could be cool. There was an entrepreneur conference in New Orleans 2 weeks ago. So I engaged in a lot of hallway conversation. And I feel like a lot of it is, the speaker just walked out of the session. I'm going to try to ask her a question and make a connection. And, I noticed that she works here and I once worked there. So let's try to connect about it. Maybe there's a Zoom meeting with some of the speakers that you can opt into ahead of time. Like a certain number of people can RSVP and do an actual live, just Skype call with one of the speakers. I think that could be really cool.
I love that. That could be a fun way to maybe it's for gold pass people, or maybe it's just first come, first serve, where you say there's 10 spots and it would look like this, right? Or maybe 8 spots. So it's a nice kind of Brady Bunch, but and Q&A with the speaker. That's super neat. I like that.
Yeah.
And what we might do, because we're actually going to play with dripping out some of the content in other ways over the course of the next few months. So we might be able to go back and just say hey, let's do a virtual watch party for this talk and then invite the speaker to come do that. So we might still be able to do it.
Cool.
It's a virtual conference. We could just run the whole thing again if we want to. So we're gonna play with the format in a few ways. Cool. Any specific things that anybody learned that was interesting? I would love to get one specific takeaway that somebody got that was valuable. A trick, a hint, a construct. I will say that,
I'll say one thing. It's not as specific as you want, but I'm just impressed that so many people are building community. I didn't realize this was such a thing these days. I thought it was good when they explained, I'm not gonna remember who it was, how community used to exist and how that's not happening anymore. Like at businesses, we're not sitting at businesses for 30 years. We're not all going to church or to the temple anymore. And so community has dwindled so much. but there's so many different areas where people are creating community, and I was just floored by that. I had no idea. I'm so happy to learn about it.
Yay. I'm glad to hear that, Penny. Cool. Okay, so we're at time. So here's the thing. Next week is Juicy. Next Monday. I will be in Denver. I will be Monday, I believe, is Camp Juicy. So that's the that is the day that I'm leading the community workshop. So I'm wondering how we can still do something, because I don't want to. We missed last week. I don't want to miss next week too. Anybody got any thoughts on something we could do? Yes, tomorrow.
Okay, I can't go to Juicy because we have way too many things going on here. I'd be happy to lead it if you want me to.
Ooh, deputized. Yay. Hell yes. Tamara, you're officially knighted facilitator of next week's Q&A.
Okay.
I'm
All
so
right.
excited.
Well, that way, you know, you're going to probably have the best of intentions while you're there, and then things are going to happen and you're not going to be able to do it. And you're absolutely right. We have to keep the momentum going. Even if people go to Juicy, just to keep the call going is important. So I'll be happy to do it.
Rad. Okay, thanks. And I don't know how the schedule lines up, but maybe we can check in, us who are at Juicy, maybe we could pop in as attendees if the timing lines up. That would be fun.
I guess you'll just have to give me the, what's the word? Beeps. Okay, thanks. Yeah. That's, you know what I meant to say, but yeah. I couldn't get it. We had a very, very busy last week and an event yesterday, so my brain is still fried. Whew, I'm tired.
Good busy?
Yeah, well, we had our 3rd birthday last week, so we had a big party on the patio, which involved me, Megan, and Clint redoing the patio, which involved shopping. And then I had a speaking event on Friday where I spoke twice. And then we had a huge outdoor festival we did on Sunday. So we're all a bit whooped this week.
Oh, wow. Congratulations on 3 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Send a photo.
I will. I've got to get them off the camera, but yes, I will.
All right. Thanks, everybody. It's been a pleasure. I'm very excited to see some of you next week. And yeah, keep being awesome. We'll talk more soon.
Bye.